Zelda games are often praised to hell and back. There are always such high standards set for the series. So when there is a case when a new entry at the time does not meet fan expectations, conundrums do arise. But if everything is able to mesh perfectly, then oh boy. Zelda is no stranger to this concept, however. Many fans often have their favorite games in the series. Some can even be able to list their favorite games in a specific order. Well, the cat's out of the bag. You saw the title. You know what you're getting yourself into. Oof. My top 5 all-time favorite Zelda games? Yep, this is surely going to offend at least one of my 20 or something returning viewers. Look, if you have something to gripe about my list, or perhaps how things were ordered around, by all means, tell me off in the comments below. Also, just for some preset guidelines, these games are the ones that I've played in the past. I wanted to make this the case, as I feel like most of the times, to have a say in a game, you should have at least played the game beforehand. I mean, I feel like this should go without saying. Alright, buckle up, grab a snack. Here are my top 5 favorite Zelda games of all time. Number 5. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Whoa, please, let me explain my point. Well, for starters, let me set the record straight. This is a good game, screw that, an amazing one. Not many at all can hold a candle to its legacy. Some regard it as the best game of all time. Best game of all time? I don't personally think so. But if that's the case for you, then I suppose more power to you, man. One credit I must give to Ocarina of Time, although, is how well it's aged. It's aged just like a fine wine. I mean, aside from graphics, obviously, the gameplay doesn't feel obsolete even after 20 years from its initial release date. Features like Z-targeting are even used in modern games, even to this day. I mean, other than some very questionable means of progressing within the narrative, there aren't too many major issues at hand. The story overall is sort of by the books for a Zelda game. Some argue Ocarina of Time is like A Link to the Past, but in 3D. While it does take some notes, like collecting 3 items before being able to snag the Master Sword, I feel like these games are rather different. I'm sure story-wise, the developers wanted to stay safe, as grasping the 3D adventure genre was quite the feat. To be honest, I feel like this was the best call. I mean, if they went for voice acting, it probably would have been outdated. It was, like I said, the best decision to keep things safe. Trust me, we do not need another Zelda CDI on our hands. Okay, aside from that, if you live under a rock and you haven't played Ocarina of Time, I highly recommend grabbing the Nintendo 3DS version, due to a massive graphical and frame rate improvements. Also, the remakes allow the player to equip more items, including gear, like the Iron Boots. Should I even bother to explain why this is a good thing? Number 4. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. This game is low on the list for certain reasons. Overall, the game is magnificent. It returns to the standards of the original NES game by enabling the player to explore an open world. Choosing your route throughout the game is heavily encouraged. The game's landscapes are, simply put, beautiful. Colors and scenery egg the player on to traverse Hyrule. There are gripes I do have, one being the lack of much story. Most major events are told in flashbacks. It's just sad because more of the interesting events already transpired beforehand. Also, another issue at hand is the side quests. They're rather, how should I say it, unrewarding. Most of the time, they feel like fetch quests, and the compensation is not worthwhile either. Most of the time, the player is rewarded with rupees. And on paper, that may sound great, but after a while, money isn't really an issue. Selling minerals is an easy way to make money fast. It's sad, but most of the time, I just end up avoiding these side quests for this reason. Aside from these issues, the game overall has a lot of replayability. The main reason why it's at number 4 is because there's other entries in the series that I overall enjoy more. Number 3. The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. Simply put, one of my favorite 3DS games. The design is clean and easy on the eyes, and runs at a satisfying 60 frames per second. This game's main feature is that it enables you to rent/buy most of the dungeon items as soon as possible. This, especially towards the latter half of the game, gives the player a sense of freedom on what dungeons they'd like to tackle down first. Now there we go, this is the sort of freedom that I prefer over Breath of the Wild. Being blocked by item restrictions is no more. This gives the game so much replay value. Changing up the dungeon order spices up multiple playthroughs. What also helps out is being able to play this on the go with the Nintendo 3DS. Design-wise, one could easily play this game in bits and pieces. Overall, this is a game I can easily recommend, even though the 3DS is dead. It's a clean and classic Zelda at its finest. Number 2, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Oh boy, a precursor being better than the sequel? Why no, that's never happened before. The sequel is always more remembered. Okay, aside from jokes, I do prefer A Link to the Past over A Link Between Worlds. There are a multitude of reasons behind this judgment. Well, first, I feel like A Link to the Past has a greater base of difficulty. In Worlds, I rarely needed to use fairies. Also, a downside to having all your items at your disposal does mean you're decked out rather early. I suppose a band-aid solution to this is to play hero mode, which does mitigate some issues. Also, another point being the item variety. They are extremely unique within A Link to the Past. While yes, there are items with similar properties like the medallions, but never returning items like the Cane of Samaria and Bryna, I'm sorry, I just can't pronounce that for the life of me. Also, of course, the magic cape gives the inventory a unique flavor. Aside from these reasons, I enjoy the game so much because it's easy to get into. The introduction is rather quick, and the dungeons typically don't overdo it time-wise. That is, until later in the game. I'm talking about you, Ice Palace. For me at least, there's a lot of nostalgia behind this game, specifically the GBA port. Aside from the Game Boy's inferior sound capabilities to the Super Nintendo, there is never mind. Before I announce the number 1 spot, I'd like to put A Link's Awakening into the honorable mentions. This is primarily due to my experience with the game. I haven't beaten the game, nor do I feel like I've played far enough. Also, one thing to take note of is the recently announced remake of the game for the Nintendo Switch. If I had to say anything, I think the plot is different but in a good way. The game took risks, and it seemed to pay off rather nicely. Okay, now back to the list. Number 1 is The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. At this rate on the list, some of you may have expected this. Quite frankly, what can I truly say that hasn't been said before? I love the risks this game took. The developers knew doing the same thing as Ocarina of Time wouldn't be enough to fill the game's shoes. Aside from that, there was so much pressure put on the team with the 18-month time restraint. To make the deadline, Nintendo decided to reuse character models from Ocarina of Time. I personally don't mind this, as luckily this makes sense because Termina is Hyrule's alternate counterpart. Like Link's Awakening, I'm glad this game took risks too. It's such a great change of pace to have no game without Zelda or Ganon. Oh, okay, kind of. Zelda does appear in a flashback in the beginning of the game, but I mean, I'm not really going to count that too much. I'm sure many of you guys know the game's 2 main gimmicks, the masks and the 3-day time limit. With certain masks, you're able to turn into a Zora, a Deku, and a Goron, which give Link great versatility. I also enjoy the 3-day time limit. I think when I was younger, I was intimidated by it, but sooner or later I did get used to it and learned to love it. Micromanaging through the game is just so satisfying. All in all, I kinda think I've been rambling on for a while. I think you guys understand why I like this game. I would love to go into more detail, perhaps in a future review of this game. There are so many things I didn't get to talk about, like the plot, characters, specific details I really liked. I mean, all this is just what makes this game amazing. But look, I would recommend a new Zelda player to play a different Zelda game before this, as it does break a lot of traditions. Perhaps play Ocarina of Time, that's a really good starter. One question though. 3DS remake? Or Nintendo 64 original? Nope, different video, different day. Thank you guys so much to making it to the end of the video. I highly appreciate it, and a lot of work and love was put into this video, and which I enjoyed making. Now, if you guys want to see more content, I stream on Twitch a lot, practically almost every day, but aside from that, have an awesome day. Thank you so much for watching.